Welcome to the 39th episode of the Tertius Times podcast. Today is Thursday, October 14th, 2021. I'm your host, Brian Wright, and today we will look at a news report about deadly violence erupting in Beirut. For the interview segment, I continue to speak with Pastor Wally, who begins his discussion on Christian persecution in the Islamic world. If you are or will be in the Washington, D.C. area on Wednesday, October 27th, you are invited to attend the China Forum 2021. As the website states, the goal of the China Forum is to help Americans understand the nature of the People's Republic of China, the Chinese Communist Party, and key issues in U.S.-China relations. Again, a radio interview, Afghanistan, Jihad, and Christian Persecution with Raymond Ibrahim is available through the link in the description. I encourage everyone to listen in. I will repeat these announcements at the end of the podcast. All the links are in the description. Shia militia groups, mainly Hezbollah and Amal, have been involved in violent protests against the judge in charge of the investigation into last year's deadly explosion in Beirut. According to Live, deadly clashes rocked Lebanese capital after protest against Beirut blast judge, October 14th, 2021, from France 24. The judge has recently summoned current and former politicians, but it seems the investigation is hitting too close to home for some, triggering the protest and the ensuing violence. The judge had to suspend the investigation as a result. The day prior, Shia crowds voiced displeasure with the judge, while other protesters carrying large crosses, which is an offensive symbol to Muslims, marched through the streets in support of Christian groups. So far, 6 people have been killed, including one woman sheltering in her home. Apparently, some snipers have been indiscriminately firing into buildings. It is not clear who began the shooting, but reports indicate snipers were on rooftops and many militia members were in the large crowd of protesters. Shia militia claimed that the rooftop snipers were Christians who began the firing, and that the Shia fighters were firing back at the Christians, but one analyst attributes the violence to Shia elements attempting to distract attention. The Lebanese army has managed to contain the violence for now, but many fear the violence will soon continue and may possibly get worse. The fighting line, the so-called Green Line, is roughly the same as that between Shia and Christian elements during Lebanon's civil war from 1975 to 1990. The mutual animosity of both religiously identified groups has remained since the end of the civil war, and this outbreak is an indication that their bitter rivalry has not waned in the 31 years following the war. Pray for Lebanon, especially the militant group who seek to threaten the truth from coming out. Pray that those in Hezbollah and other Shia militia groups, that they would cease from violently imposing their views on the people of Lebanon. Pray that their hearts would soften and see the counterproductive use of violence. Pray for the Christians in the country that they would in turn pray for their enemies. Pray for their protection. Pray for the leaders of Lebanon that they would seek heavenly wisdom and apply that wisdom in appropriate and effective ways to finally bring peace to their country. And now let's rejoin the interview with Pastor Wally. Last week, he has been telling us of his life and how he found his way, led by God, to Saudi Arabia and his life as a missionary in the Middle East. He continued to describe his life and ministry after the expulsion from the kingdom. In the last couple days, he began a discussion focusing on persecution in general. Today, that discussion will begin on Islamic persecution of Christians.
Welcome back again with our exciting interview with Pastor Wally. This particular segment, we're going to be talking about what he's very familiar with, experienced it himself, and that is persecution of Christians in the Islamic world. And so without further ado, Pastor Wally, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. It's good to be back with you. This is really exciting days we live in.
Yes.
We're seeing a lot of circumstances and events unfolding, which is really the unraveling of prophecies in the scriptures. As we talked last time, we talked about persecution, the reason behind persecution. It became a global persecution. It was all mentioned by Christ warning the church or the believers. I want to talk today about, my experience with Muslim people, because I was in that setting for 11 years. Arabia being the birthplace of the Muslim prophet Muhammad, and Arabia hosting the two greatest mosques, the one in Mecca and the one in Medina. The two, they call them the two holiest shrines of Islam. The third one is the one in Jerusalem.
Right.
But I want to start again today by mentioning a passage from the words of Christ in the Gospel of John, because he said in John, in chapter 10, verse 16, he said, I have other sheep that are not of the sheep pen. I must bring them also. They too will listen to my voice, and there shall be one flock and one shepherd. So I understand this to mean that he was talking about, they are not of the sheep pen, talking about the Jewish believers, because the first followers of Christ were all Jews.
Right.
Okay. And he goes, I have other sheep that are not of the sheep pen. I'd like to apply that to others that are not of the Jews, beginning with the neighboring nations around Israel. And today, all of them are Muslim nations. There's
Right.
not a single Hindu or Buddhist nation there. Everyone is a Muslim nation. So I feel like the other sheep that Jesus is talking about are the ones you referred to as our cousins. Okay? Because they claim Abraham as their father as well.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
us,
Yeah.
and just like the Jews.
Right.
So in other words, because we are of the order of Isaac and Jacob, theirs is the order of Ishmael, who
Right.
was the half brother of Isaac. And so that in that sense, they are cousins to these people, the Jews, I mean, and us as well. And so when Christ spoke of this, not many saw it that way. But the Lord revealed that to me. The other sheep are those outside of the Jewish community. And these are the Arab Muslims. And true enough, that's where he sent me. Because I could have been sent to so many other locations.
Right.
But there were other missionaries that have been there, and even there until now, But not many were sent as missionaries to Saudi Arabia, the stronghold of Islam. No one could get in, like you said earlier. No one could get in as a missionary.
Right.
So I got in through a work permit, so I was working. But my experience is that we have to really be very sensitive, to the culture, to the religion, to the traditions of the Muslim people, because they have been in existence longer than most of us. The only one that's been in existence longer than them were the Jewish people.
Yes.
But they were almost side by side in existence on account of Ishmael. They've been there for a long, long time.
We will leave the interview there and pick it up again tomorrow, where Pastor Wally will continue to share his thoughts on Christian persecution in an Islamic context. As I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, if you are or will be in the Washington, D.C. area on Wednesday, October 27th, you are invited to attend the China Forum 2021. Again, as the website states, the goal of the China Forum is to help Americans understand the nature of the People's Republic of China, the Chinese Communist Party, and key issues in U.S.-China relations. Finally, again, be sure to listen to radio interview, Afghanistan, Jihad, and Christian Persecution with Raymond Ibrahim. All the links are in the description. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you found the information and interview presented here useful. and that it encouraged you to pray for these people and areas of concern, and perhaps even inspires you to take positive steps of involvement to alleviate the suffering of so many around the globe. Continue to pray for those mentioned today as you are led. Finally, pray with me that God's peace, eternally beyond our comprehension, guard the lives of all those who follow Christ and flows outward to bring that peace to all the world.